Cheers, guys. I'm your host, Epyx. This is the VR show, episode 3 to be specific. And guys, it is Gamin' Friday, that most hallowed of days. My favorite frickin' day of the week, but you guys know that already. What do I have planned? It's going to be a bit more status quo. It's going to be some more Skyrim VR, which 6 weeks later, I am still playing the hell out of. I just absolutely love that. More Elite Dangerous. There's been a few patches since I stopped playing that game. Man, talk about just a comfortable fit to get back into that game and just instantly remember how much fun it was. There is nothing like that feeling of sitting in a VR spaceship, guys, especially, and I know I've said this so many times, when you've got the damn controllers lined up with the controllers in the game. Like real life versus game is in the same spot. The immersion is just through the roof, which in a cockpit in outer space is literally into the vacuum of space, but that is just what makes it so amazing. And there's been some pretty cool changes to that game. If you haven't tried, for example, one of my favorite has been at the start when you can pick from a variety of training missions, whether it's mining, whatever, the combat section has been completely fleshed out. So you can essentially just jump right into combat. So if all you've got time for is maybe 15, 20 minutes of space combat in Elite Dangerous, you don't want to load your game, exit the space station, man, don't go past the first menu. Just go into training, pick one of the combat missions. You're above, the atmosphere of a planet, and based on what skill level you select, you're thrown right into the battle. And you are just basically facing endless wave after endless wave, which is an absolute blast. So there's been that. Later on, since I've only got her for another 2.5 weeks before she's off to university, my daughter and I, we're going to do some Magic the Gathering. I've really been enjoying not just Dominaria, but the latest Core 2019 set. So pretty much we hadn't played this for about a decade, I'd say, and we picked up a couple of boxes of Dominaria 2019 and the Egyptian Achaemenid. Of course, I'm butchering it right now, but whatever that one was called, a couple of boxes of that as well. And it's just been a lot of fun. So let me know in the comments, guys, what you have planned for Gamin' Friday. That's pretty much what's on my itinerary. Also, guys, I want to mention I'm probably going to be doing a live stream either tomorrow or Sunday. I'll update you guys. Look out for the tweet. So if you're not already on my Twitter, get onto the Twitter, especially if you're interested in that. You can always drop off after or just use it exclusively for live stream events, etc., because I'll announce it there. So either Saturday or Sunday, and it'll be probably very much Q&A style for the first bit, but this time around, I want to actually jump into some VR games and experiences with you guys on that live stream. So excited about all of that, excited about tonight's show. The other thing that was a lot of fun was catching up with the other VR YouTube content creators. Now, I know from some quarters, he gets a lot of slack and he would be Nady, but guys, if you sit where I'm sitting as a content creator, that guy has been so awesome behind the scenes, just supporting the rest of us. For example, Twitter. He set up a Twitter group where all the VR content creators can chat with each other. I mean, that's something you don't see very often in YouTube at all. Like imagine a place where all the drama channels chatted or the game content creators. There's not a hell of a lot of that. Yet for VR, it's that close-knit, and it's just been awesome to catch up with the guys and gals and talk about where VR's at now, where we think it's going, and stuff that we've individually been up to and enjoying or not enjoying in VR. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, guys. And with that said, let's jump into VR Roundup. And let's start things off with a well wish. Speaking of fellow VR YouTubers, our good colleague Facepalm over at The Grid, literally becoming one of his own programs and bitten by a nasty bug. Now, he was able to bravely complete last week's video. However, he did this from a hospital bed, one-armed, I may add, and through tear-filled eyes. Facepalm, mate. Get well soon. Next up, Nintendo Switch hack reveals VR. Well, the other console maker, Nintendo, has on numerous occasions also kind of hinted at VR, at times saying no interest in it, and other times kind of hinting at stuff. And for it not to be on their immediate horizon, you can't really blame them, given their rocky relationship with the word virtual, to start with. Rumors have swirled about VR support, but nothing beyond words and rumors has surfaced. Until this small video from a Twitter user on the 8th of August, it claims to show a buried VR mod deep within the firmware. I say claims, as several others have pointed out that it could just be part of a hoax, or, and in my opinion the more likely explanation, a legacy remnant of the Android graphics APIs that Nintendo adapted for its own rendering. Next up, StarVR. Now, if you've paid a visit to StarVR's website within the last few days, you know you get a full screen teaser that shows a silhouette of a headset and the cryptic phrase, "We made something for you." And along with that, the date of August 14th, 2018, which seems to indicate a reveal taking place during the upcoming SIGGRAPH 2018 conference. So definitely going to stay all on top of that. And if anything comes out of it, I'll let you guys know in a future episode. This last week, a Reddit user by the name of Elevate.to discovered some trademarks that Nvidia filed back in May of this year for a few acronyms. Among those, VR2, VR+, VR2, and VR2+. Now, of note, the same day in May, they also filed for Virtual Link, which is designed to make the next generation of PC VR headsets faster and more accessible, utilizing a single USB Type-C connector to replace basically all the other various leads. The company also recently filed trademarks for Quadro RTX and GeForce RTX. So, some quarters, Linus Tech Tips, I'm looking at you, maybe, talking about the doom and gloom prophecy of the death of VR, but Nvidia definitely a counterexample to that, especially with these latest trademarks. Also, HTC experimenting with multiple base stations that they've got linked for connected multi-room tracking. There's a recent SteamVR beta update that allowed for up to 16 of the SteamVR Tracking 2.0 base stations to be linked together to form a continuous tracking volume. They tested this in a demo space made up of several rooms, the idea being that their tech could be used much like the commercial tech that you see in the Void, but without the use of more expensive and professional motion capture equipment. A Valve engineer quick to counter the enthusiasm with a bit of a buzzkill, saying that testing of the feature was a bit premature as the beta is mainly about support for the radio-based channel configuration tools. Echo Combat, which has seen 2 open betas to date, is going to receive a 3rd open beta, this one taking place on the weekend of August 16th, so essentially next weekend. According to an update, the 3rd open beta is going to see the introduction of their gear patch. That supposedly focuses on tweaks to equipment like grenades and abilities. At least that's the guess of the folks over at Road to VR. So we'll have to find out when next weekend comes and goes, what that brings with it. Now, it's been pretty quiet on the Samsung Gear VR front. In fact, Samsung's recent event had no real mention of VR except indirectly, i.e. via the release of the Samsung Galaxy Note 9. That's going to see the most powerful phone yet to basically grace the mobile VR kit known as Gear VR. Now, the phone comes in a couple of versions. You've got a 512 gigabyte version boasting 8 gigs of RAM and a 128 gig version that boasts 6 gigabytes of RAM. As for the GPU CPU, it's boasting a hefty Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 in addition to a much bigger 4,000 milliamp battery, lithium ion of course, that should see much longer VR sessions possible as well with that combo, the Snapdragon one. Anything that's been released essentially since the Gear VR first launched should be able to run at comfortable speeds, no lag, and no difficulties. The phone itself is going to launch August 24th of this month, so I'll have some more details when that date arrives. Then we've got the VR experience Electronauts, this by developer Survios, those of raw data fame. It was released on Rift and Vive, as well as PlayStation VR on the 7th of August. Now, if you like electronic music and or was ever part of the rave scene, this may have some appeal for you. Whether you just want to tinker with various electronic beats or actually create something more involved via its advanced tool set and capabilities, well, it pretty much caters to that whole gamut. You can even record your advanced stuff. There's basically a little bit of everything for the electronic music lover in this package. Now, I'm personally a huge fan of electronic music. EBM, probably the genre after metal that I listen to most, so definitely on my list of things that I want to check out. Now, I talked about Marvel in the introduction. The Marvel Powers United VR. They had an update via their first patch. This from devs Sanzuru Games. The game itself launching about 2 weeks ago to, let's be honest, a flurry of bugs and some initial iffy press. Well, the devs have, according to themselves, been hard at work on this patch with a lot of fixes, tweaks, additions, as well as changes. Taking just a quick look at the release notes for this first patch reveals a veritable buffet of notes. A few of those include improved AI, improved messaging between players, rebalancing of hero health and damage, improved difficulty balancing, private match support, fixes to individual heroes' powers and abilities, as well as bug fixes. Wolverine has abilities fixed, Venom's effects, as well as match screen summaries, all fixed with this latest patch, so definitely one worth checking out. Also, Oculus has removed a handful of fake game reviews. Now, they say there's no, reason to sound an alarm. They're basically saying it was just a handful. They've gone out of their way to state that, in fact, saying on numerous occasions it's an insignificant percentage. Looking at the reviews in question, it's pretty obvious they were not only gamed reviews, but likely by the very same bad grammar bandit. I mean, look at some of these gems. The game is just top. With this endless shooter, you'll never get off of the screen. I advise everyone to buy. Cool shooter, such a small. I advise everyone to play this wonderful game. Unforgettable experience. Two of my favorite. Wonderful game. This endless shooter does not let you get out of the game. Developer of many thanks for such a great game for such little money. And I think my all-time favorite, smart shooter. The gameplay is just a tower. Developer of this miracle, I adore you. Marry me. Now, why does this sound familiar to an older gamer like myself? And our last VR Roundup, friend of the channel, Alex of Cybust fame, he sent out a bit of a teaser yesterday via his Twitter feed, tweeting this picture. Now, I've tried and haven't been too successful in prying more details out of Alex, but I'm pretty sure we all think we know what this is, and if it is in fact that, then you know what? This would be a pretty cool compliment to my background and a future Pimax, perhaps. Hopefully, Alex is able to reveal soon. If and when he does, I'll report on it here. And let's get in a little bit more in depth with the Magic Leap, which, as you may or may not know, but probably know unless you've been away from kind of all internet traffic the last week or so, the Magic Leap Creator Edition was launched a couple of days ago. Now, I was quite a bit negative over their official demo, and I think that was fair given the hype, the amount of money raised, which I'm going to say it again, $2+ billion US. It's not a small sum. That is a lot of money. And again, back to the hype, those initial demos that we saw and what they translated to when we got the final demo, which, sorry, a rock golem with occlusion not kind of really working. It just wasn't that impressive. So where are we at with this Creator Edition? More of the same or impressed suddenly? Well, unfortunately for me personally, a little bit more of the same. Let's start with the price tag, $2,295 US. Or let's just call it what it is, $2,300 US for the Creator Edition. Now, what does that get us? And here's where I get a little bit frustrated with Magic Leap, because they do this frequently. They did it with, the expectations the first time around with their crazy whale busting through the gymnasium floor. They did it with, their cryptic tweets and the hype hints. And then, of course, all of that was tempered by the very much let down, for most of us, demo. Well, let's look at some of these specs that they hype up on this Creator Edition. Let's get to the truth of what some of these things mean. And, at the end of the day, is it worth $2,300 US? Do they bring something amazing to the table? Let's take a look. So what does that $2,300 US get you? Well, let's start off with the processor. An Nvidia Parker SoC CPU, which is basically a 2 Denver 2.0 64-bit core processor with 4 ARM Cortex A57 64-bit cores. Now that's a mouthful, but spec-wise, not crazy, awesome, or awe-inspiring. The GPU as well, it's an Nvidia Pascal with 256 CUDA cores. Again, it's okay, but it's not, crazy powerful by any means. The RAM is a little bit of a letdown. We've got 8 gigabytes of RAM. We've got 128 gigabytes of storage, a 3-hour lithium charge battery. That's not a hell of a lot of time. That's, pretty damn short, really, for this type of a device. Finally, we've got support for Bluetooth 4.2 and, of course, Wi-Fi 802.11. So those are the specs, the hardware kind of portions that they can't really hype because they're components that are available elsewhere. They're just they're drawing on that technology and implementing it for their solution. What about the stuff that's unique, that's proprietary to Magic Leap itself? Where does that stuff stack up? Let's take a look at the first piece of that, which would be mission control. Remember, this is their controller. And what they called this thing was an engineering marvel, utilizing 6 degrees of freedom. Now, I could dig into this and really kind of go far with it, but let's just look at it on the surface. The first thing that came to my mind is, of course, the PlayStation 3 6-axis pre-DualShock 3 controller, the one that didn't have the feedback, but was 6 degrees of freedom. That was released in 2006. So we're talking almost 12 years ago. So is 6 degrees of freedom really that meaningful? Is it that awe-inspiring? In my opinion, hell no. It's almost a decade and a half ago, and probably earlier examples of that. Like I said, that was just what kind of came to me right away. Because now if I think about it, Track IR, which isn't a controller 6 degree of freedom, but rather an IR-based 6 degree of freedom tracker, that goes back to 2001. So we're talking almost 2 decades ago. Okay, so what about the operating system? The much, vaunted Lumen OS. At the end of the day, it's basically a hybrid of Linux and Android. And to me, doesn't seem to bring anything really special to the table. It's certainly not from the ground up new, and based on nothing. It's heavily based, like I said, on Linux and Android. Next, they tout their gesture support. Well, even the Oculus Rift, for example, on the touch has rudimentary gesture support. Nothing special in my opinion. We've seen gesture support elsewhere, whether it's pinching, thumbs up, pointing, L, C. A lot of the other devices can do that already. So still not so impressed. Until we see the actual commercial release for consumers, not the creator version, and we see stuff not programmed by the company itself, because we kind of know that for, again, the 2+ billion, the 5, examples of demos that are out there, to me, also not very inspiring. Perhaps the developer community can come up with stuff that's a little bit more exciting. So at this point in time, nothing excites me about Magic Leap. I think it's overpriced. I think it's been overhyped. And I'm still willing, though, to sit back and wait, and hopefully as unbiased as possible, because there's obviously a bias creeping in, one of extreme negativity based on a lot of false promises and overhyping. I'm still willing to try to dial that back when it finally gets released. Take a look at it again. Look at it within the context of augmented reality, because remember, it's not VR, it's not Kinect, it's its own thing. It's augmented reality. And I've made that argument before, that we can't lump AR and VR together, that they are very separate entities. And with that said, I will give AR that same benefit of the doubt, and everything I've just said about all those technologies, if they can come together, and if the sum of all of those can deliver something amazing and cool, well, I'm willing to give it a go over once that arrives. So with that said, we'll probably go radio silent on this until we actually see something at the consumer level. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on the Magic Leap. And next up, this one I thought was pretty cool, in that I was watching some YouTube videos and I came across a YouTube video. There's a guy in New York City. His goal was to survive a week on $1 a day, food-wise, right? Nourishment-wise, so food and drink. And it was pretty cool how he went about it. So it was a combination of online coupons, openings, promotions, and just buying power of $1. He was able to make every week or every day of the week work. So I got to thinking, how about virtual reality? Because all of us are in the same boat in that we bought these expensive pieces of kit. And of course, the follow-up to that is you start buying the games or experiences. Well, we all have weeks, months, larger segments of time where our budget for games and experience is low to none. So if I tried to apply the same thing but dialed it back even more to free, not $1, but free, what could you do with VR for the price tag of free? I think it's actually pretty amazing what you can do, because there's some amazing stuff out there that is free for VR. So let's take a look. First up, Google Earth VR. This thing is available for Rift, Vive, mixed reality devices, the Windows ones. And from day one, I've been impressed with this. When they added Street View, though, they took this app to a whole other level. If you are somebody who likes traveling, but you're geographically challenged, or you hate traveling and you're geographically challenged, maybe you're a student, using this thing, I guarantee you, for maybe 20, 30 minutes a day, you are going to become better at geography. Force yourself to fly to locations, right? Maybe it's a vacation destination. Maybe you live in New York and you want to go to Orlando for Disney World, for example. Or you're on the West Coast, Vancouver, like where I lived, going down to Disneyland, flying to Hawaii, going to Japan. Do that all within Google Earth VR. But instead of hopping on a plane, you do it literally through the program flying over the terrain. That's what Google Earth allows you to do. Now, it is moments in time, meaning there's an army of vans and cars, the Google camera cars that are, anywhere in the world at any given moment in time, capturing street views. That gets paired with data from satellites, data from high altitude planes, lower altitude stuff. The bigger metropolitan areas have, 3D amazing views. The major suburbs, same thing. You've got street views of all of those. But at the very least, you can fly over the surface of our planet to scale and go absolutely anywhere. And in most of those big cities, like I was saying, you can actually land. You could go back to places that you grew up in, right? Nostalgia, places you visited, places you want to go. In short, Google Earth VR for free, probably the #1 VR application that I can think of for free in terms of bang for the buck. What you can do for the price tag of free. Now, I know virtual reality always gets this, unrightfully so in my opinion, bad rap for not being social, right? Well, look at some of these titles for free. First up, Dragonfront. This, much like Magic the Gathering that I talked about earlier that I'm going to be playing later today, it's a card game. It's a 30-deck game, unlike the 60 plus that you do with Magic, based on 300 plus cards available. And I think it's 8 diverse factions that you can play. It's essentially a strategic multiplayer card game entirely for free on the Rift. I haven't personally played it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. Still on the Rift, Archangel Hellfire. Now, you can pay for this elsewhere, but on the Rift, it's a free VR multiplayer experience, especially if you're more into kind of the visceral head-to-head stuff. Not the tabletop card games, but actual fly by the seat of your pants combat. Now, the original was a rail shooter. This one is more freeform multiplayer mayhem style, but again, free. Then we've got Robo Recall, which is free. There's a caveat to this if you've purchased the touch controller. So if you get that hardware, you can get Robo Recall for free. Another fantastic title. People ask me, what is it similar to? I say generally, even though it's a different game, if you liked raw data, you're probably going to like Robo Recall. I think it's safe to say. Now, this next one, Rec Room, I don't have to really get into. Most people know about that. It's pretty much available for everything. It's free and it's very social. And a lot of people swear by it, say it is a fantastic title, and admittedly one that I still, to this day, have not dived into. And there's more. These are just the ones that I kind of cherry-picked off the top, either first-hand experience like Google Earth VR or Robo Recall, or I've heard from other people or other accounts that these are high-quality experiences. So certainly, if you've just purchased your VR hardware and that has left you absolutely strapped for a period of time, whether it's days or even a few weeks, you're going to get by just fine on some free stuff. Let me know if I missed anything free, guys, in the comments below to share with others. And take a look down below. There's probably going to be some suggestions for you beyond this list. Well, guys, here we are. Time for this week's VR rant. I was originally going to do a rant, and in fact, I filmed one about 10 minutes long that had to do with the tweets earlier this week regarding Linus Tech Tips. And then I realized not only is it essentially the same subject I covered in the rant 2 weeks ago, prophesizing the death of VR, the doom and gloom, but it's really not going to help the cause. It's, in fact, might do the opposite and put more light on it. So, figured, you know what, screw that noise. Let's go with the best way to counter that. And that is just by being fantastic ambassadors for VR. Each and every one of us, spreading the message when we can in conversation, letting people try VR if there's an opportunity, and just spread it far and wide, show up at conventions, purchase the games we like, and in short, support the hardware and software for VR. That's the best way, so that's what I'm going to do personally. Also want to let you guys know there's likely going to be a live stream tomorrow, and if you're not already on my Twitter feed, it's a great place to not get a lot of spam because I don't, send out messages every time I eat something and take a picture of it. It's basically mostly to broadcast content getting released here. So if you don't want to miss content, that's a great way for stuff like the live stream. If there is stuff worthy to talk about, of course, I do from time to time mention it on Twitter. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I'm excited about this one, guys, is I had indicated filming people's reactions to VR, the before, during, and after, when this becomes a VR arcade. Not so much this room, which will stay my studio, but the main part of the man cave. I've already talked to Halifax VR, and until I'm set up, they're okay with me filming there, which I'm excited about. So expect that content coming pretty soon. And the conversion of the space right next door here into a VR arcade. I think that's going to be fantastic. I want to do it right. I want to make it look commercial, licensing-wise, all of that stuff. So it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun, and we'll likely do that as a standalone series. Well, guys, hopefully you're enjoying your weekend. I know I'm a day late again, but it's continuing to get better every week in terms of timeliness. So, guys, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, have a fantastic one. And as always, cheers.